Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive economic signal that, honestly, almost everyone else is completely missing. I mean, for years, politicians have been promising this grand industrial renaissance in America, right? And for years, it just felt like empty rhetoric. But right now, hidden deep inside some of the most boring, unglamorous data you could possibly imagine, there is a seismic shift happening right under our feet. We're talking about a true hidden boom. So let's just jump right in and look at the actual numbers proving that something totally unprecedented is unfolding. 50%. Right now, a staggering 50% of all flatbed truckloads are being rejected. Now, in the freight world, a rejection basically means a trucking company is looking at a shipper and saying, yeah, no thanks, I'm not taking your cargo for that price because I can easily find a better, higher-paying load right down the street. The thing is, this industry is hyperreactive. Usually, a temporary blip fixes itself in a week or two. But this? No way. This is not a temporary blip. It's a massive, undeniable anomaly in the freight data. Which brings us to the million-dollar question. Why is America's absolute simplest truck suddenly impossible to book? I mean, a flatbed is literally just four wheels and a wooden deck. There's no walls, no roof, no refrigeration unit. The design hasn't really changed much since, what, 1898? And that is exactly why this is such a mystery. You don't move consumer goods on a flatbed. Nobody is getting their Amazon Prime delivery on a 53-foot open deck. These trucks carry the heavy stuff that just won't fit in a box. Stuff like massive rolls of steel, giant factory equipment, and tons of raw lumber.
And this whole situation brilliantly highlights a great economic concept called revealed preference. You know, it's so easy to get caught up in what people say or what's spinning in the daily news cycle, but what people actually do, where they put their cash, you cannot fake that. If the price to hire a flatbed literally doubles and companies are still happily choosing to pay that doubled rate just to move raw materials, well, they're revealing their true preference. Freight data lives in this world of absolute truth. Companies are spending massive amounts of real hard cash to move steel and lumber, and they wouldn't be doing that for no reason.
This data is basically forcing us to redraw our mental map of the whole U.S. economy. For the last 30 years, the old map was completely dominant. Economic activity always heated up on the coasts first, places like LA or Newark. Why? Because America just bought all its stuff from overseas. Imports hit the coast and slowly trickled inland. But this new map? Totally flipped. Freight activity is running red hot right through the middle of the country. We're talking the I-35 corridor, the Rust Belt, straight down into Texas. We are actively shifting from the center of the country just quietly receiving packages to the center of the country aggressively driving the market.
And hey, if you're thinking, okay, maybe it's just a weird fluke with flatbeds, look at the rest of the supply chain. Every section of the industrial pipe is just bursting. Rail freight, jumping at the exact same time. Chemical and green shipments are hitting 20-year and in some cases all-time highs. Even Caterpillar, the absolute titan of heavy machinery, their manufacturing backlog has hit an all-time high. So this isn't just a handful of busy trucks. This is a broad-based industrial heartbeat that is absolutely roaring back to life across the entire nation.
Which leads us to Section 1, the cheat code, America's unfair advantage. So there's a foundational bedrock making this entire physical resurgence mathematically possible, and it's basically the ultimate economic cheat code. When most of us think about manufacturing, we immediately think about labor, right? We assume companies just offshore everything to find cheaper hands. But for heavy manufacturing, energy is actually the real MVP. It accounts for a massive 40% of their total costs. You literally cannot build a giant factory without an absolute guarantee of abundant, dirt-cheap power. And that brings us to this massive geopolitical disparity in energy. The U.S. is essentially this giant, isolated island that is just awash in cheap, highly stable natural gas, which, by the way, is exactly what powers most heavy factories. To put this in perspective, natural gas in China costs about 4 times what it does in the U.S. And Europe? Oh man, they are paying wildly more, especially since countries like Germany decided to decommission their own energy supplies, which has pretty much stunted their historical industrial powerhouses. Just let this number sink in for a second. 15x. American factories right now have a staggering 15 times cost advantage over Europe when it comes to the literal energy required to forge steel, run those assembly lines, and build infrastructure. So despite whatever other economic bumps in the road might exist, this energy dominance is basically the ultimate unfair cheat code for the American industrial economy. Moving on to Section 2, the positive black swan. All right, now that we've mapped out the physical and energy foundations of this boom, let's pivot to the macro catalyst that is actually accelerating all of it.
To do that, we kind of have to talk about a really powerful philosophical concept. You've probably heard the term Black Swan before. Fun facts, for like 1,500 years, Europeans used the phrase Black Swan to describe something that was utterly impossible. Why? Well, because every swan they'd ever seen in their lives was white. That was until explorers finally reached Australia, saw black swans with their own two eyes, and instantly shattered that deeply held certainty. In economics, a black swan is this highly unpredictable event that falls way outside normal expectations but completely shakes the world. Usually we associate the term with huge disasters, right? Like the 2008 financial crash or the tragic events of 9/11.
But today, we need to completely flip the script on that. See, negative black swans bring destruction, fear, market crashes. They're incredibly loud and they absolutely dominate the headlines. But positive black swans, they are actually far more powerful, and they happen completely in silence. Think about a messy scientist just leaving a petri dish out on a desk. A single speck of mold floats in from the window, lands in the dish, and starts killing the bacteria around it. That accidental discovery of penicillin, it generated exactly 0 breaking news headlines at the time, but it quietly plummeted the global infection death rate and literally saved hundreds of millions of lives. That, my friends, is a positive black swan. Which brings us to Section 3, Big Tech's AI Catalyst. And that concept maps perfectly onto what we're experiencing right now. We are currently living through a massive positive black swan event, and it is being entirely driven by artificial intelligence and insane amounts of capital investment. We are talking $150 billion. This is a previously unthinkable sum of money that big tech hyperscalers are just aggressively dumping into physical data center buildouts by the year 2026. They are in an absolute dogfight for survival to provide the best AI. So all that mountain of cash they've been hoarding for years, it's suddenly being rapidly deployed right into the physical economy. Our source material actually puts this perfectly. It says, if 10 years ago, these CEOs had gone in front of their board and said, we're going to spend $150 billion in data center build-out, the board would have told them to kick rocks. But today, it's a forced arms race. They have no choice. And this race is pumping an unprecedented amount of cash into physical infrastructure, spraying money all across the country. It's creating jobs, it's demanding raw steel, it's requiring those exact flatbed trucks we talked about, and it's directly driving the industrial boom we tracked earlier. But what makes this AI boom so incredibly unique is the sheer velocity of it all. Think back to the early internet. It had a relatively gradual initial adoption phase before it finally sent US productivity soaring. But ChatGPT and modern AI, it was just immediate, mass adoption practically overnight with a dramatically steeper productivity curve. We are quite literally becoming more productive at a much faster rate than we ever did when the internet first rolled out. And let's just be crystal clear on what that actually means for us. Productivity, at its core, is simply doing more with the exact same inputs. And here's the crazy part. Because it costs big tech way more money to provide these advanced AI tools than what you and I actually pay for them, they're essentially subsidizing global knowledge for us. They've scraped up all the world's information and they're just handing it out, which creates this massive consumer surplus and makes the American workforce drastically more efficient, almost in the blink of an eye. All right, let's wrap this up in Section 4, Synthesizing the Bull Case. So let's pull all these incredible threads of our little detective story together into one cohesive, undeniably bullish picture. Step 1, we have the undeniable physical resurgence. That's the flatbed signal, right? With a 50% rejection rate proving that domestic manufacturing is absolutely roaring back in the heartland. Step 2, the foundational bedrock. That is our 15x energy cheat code, giving the US just a ridiculous advantage in heavy manufacturing costs. And finally, step 3, the digital multiplier. That $150 billion AI-positive black swan, forcing the tech giants to build massively while simultaneously supercharging our workforce productivity. When you put all of this together, when you look at the real actions companies are taking with their money rather than just the words politicians are saying on TV, the dominant media narrative of this inevitable economic decline seems completely backwards. As our source boldly states when looking at all this converging data, I've never been this bullish on the United States economy before. The physical rebuilding of America is colliding perfectly with dirt-cheap energy and an unprecedented AI productivity boom. The data is all right there, completely hidden in plain sight. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. With freight, energy, and AI all aligning perfectly in a once-in-a-generation positive black swan event, are you going to bet on the renaissance or are you just going to watch from the sidelines?